Chris, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game here in T-Town.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be with you. I think you ought to call into the press conference and say, now, Nick, what? You sure you don't want to change your mind about the quarterback? I think that would go over well, don't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. or we could ask him, and Coach, have you decided what number of series that he's going to run? I mean, did you guys ever do this when y'all were working with him just to make sure you push those right buttons a little bit?
No, because when we worked, he was the defensive coordinator, so you didn't, it was Belichick. I mean, Nick wasn't involved in any of these decisions. He was working grunt, taking orders like he's giving orders now. So it is I still do a lot of work with him, and I know him from the head coaching position, Michigan State, LSU, and now Alabama. But you got to remember, when we worked together, he wasn't my boss, and we worked for the same boss. So it's a completely different situation. But it's interesting because as similar as he and Bill are, there really are a lot different personality-wise. And because Nick gets really ticked off, Belichick is kind of like, he just won't let it get to him. But he remembers who said it, and he take names. But Nick is a guy that, as we're joking about, will go off on it, and he's always trying to make that statement to his team and make that directive out there to everyone else who will listen. He understands the media value at the college level, because every time he speaks, he's speaking to his team, he's speaking to his potential recruits, and that demanding way is a little bit different than the NFL area, where you really don't have to answer a lot of those questions. You just can kind of go a different direction. You really are the face of the program when you're at a big-time program, a college program.
We're talking to Chris Landry, LandryFootball.com, which is an incredible website. If you love to get a little bit different perspective on breaking down college football, you're going to love LandryFootball.com. It's football views from a coach, a scout, an administrator. We feature Chris every Wednesday as he breaks down a scouting report for the University of Alabama. Chris, I'm not saying that Nick Saban will, but let's just say that he called you or I and he said, what would you guys do with Tua on Saturday? What would you do? What would you do when you talk about this great quarterback here going up against, quote, the Citadel, which is a respectable opponent, as Nick told us, but certainly not a risk of losing?
Well, first of all, let me say I understand what Nick's approach is to preparing for, when he's preparing for the Citadel, what he's doing is preparing his football team to get better this week, to enhance their chances going forward in their remaining games that they're going to have. And to do anything to derail that focus is not the way he does it, and it's not the way he's built a championship program. I agree with it. I understand it. I respect it. What I would say is that I think he can accomplish the same thing by basically sitting Jalen, who definitely needs to sit more than Tua does at this point. And I don't think it's disrespecting the opponent necessarily to say, look, we've got a situation where we need some rest. Now, I realize if he did that, the speculation would run rampant, because right now my feeling is that he's got a bruised knee, a pretty deep bruise. If he sat down, then probably everyone would go, well, what's wrong with him? Does he have a tear? Is he going to be back for Auburn? Is he going to be back for Georgia? Is he going to be back for Clemson? Is he done? It would be hysteria, obviously. And he'd probably set that off, and he knows that. But I think that his whole mission is to say how important every game is and how every challenge is. But I think you can do that. And I personally would have said, look, we're evaluating health-wise, and we're going to meet with them. Here's what I'd have done at the beginning of the week. Evaluating where they are. I don't know how much work we want to give them, in terms of what they can handle. He got hit on it this past week. We're just going to have to evaluate that and just kind of leave it up in the air. And then at the end of the week, just kind of move on and just, to me, sit both of them and put it on the rest of your team internally. Say, look, this is what we need to do. It should not take any focus away from their efforts, and I think a great opportunity, quite frankly, for a young quarterback that's probably going to be the number 2 guy next year. So that's what I would have done. I don't think what he did is wrong. I don't think what he did is right. I think what he did is risky. And what I mean by that is the only thing I see derailing this club is injury at quarterback, and they got 2 of them. I mean, they got, an injury to both of them. One is more severe than the other, but that would be my concern. It's risky. It's risky any time you play football. My experience in 30 years in coaching and scouting is that when you have an injury, like you're gimpy or banged up, however you want to phrase to a situation, is it not necessarily that can get worse but certainly when you compensate for it, it often leads to, not always, often leads to other problems with that injury or another injury that creeps up because you're overcompensating. Lower back problems, hip issues, there are any number of things. I've just seen it over time, and I can't explain it medically, and I've had guys tell me that medically, well, it's really not correlated, but yet it seems to happen because we chart and graph those things. So, and I would like to point out, obviously, that it really doesn't matter who you're playing against. You could get injured just as easily against the Citadel as you could against, Clemson or Auburn. Although, let's be honest, that a really good pass rush like, say, Mississippi State is more risky because, that's going to leak some pass rush that maybe a lesser opponent might. So it is riskier against better opponents. But the point I'm trying to make is that there's that risk every time you go out. To me, I'm not that big of a risk taker. That may be a flaw of mine. But to me, I would play the percentages of getting him as healthy as I could for Auburn. And I don't think, from what I gather with Jalen, that unless they have to play him, I think he might need rest all the way to the national playoffs, because I think that, the ankle, what they did, the procedure, it worked, but it's not doing as good as they had hoped. And therefore, I think he's going to need more rest. So that's my view on it. That's what I would do. We don't know what he's going to do yet. We know what he said. And I think he's probably, decided that he will go ahead and start him. How long does he play? I mean, again, it's risky if you play one series, but does he get 2 series and get a little work and then he's out? Is it a quarter? Obviously, probably going to depend upon how the team's playing and what's the score. So maybe it's a challenge. Okay, this is what the plan is, but this is what we got to do to execute the plan. Meaning, we'll take him out. Midway through the first quarter if we've done what we need to do. But I don't know how it's going to play out. I'm hoping for good health for everyone involved, and I don't like the hope. I'm not one of those that hopes. I don't think hope's a strategy, and that's why I think it's risky for the move, but I understand and respect it.
Chris, let me add another element to this, because as we are now in practice observation period right now, a lot of media here in Tuscaloosa that have begun to report that Tua has got rid of the bulky brace that was on his knee and now is just practicing with a typical knee sleeve. Now, I've asked Tua directly about the knee brace. He hates the darn thing. He knows what it's there for, but let me ask you, do you think that is impacting some of the accuracy that we have seen with Tua as of late? LSU and then here Mississippi State, it seems like that brace is bothersome for him. Do you see it that way?
Could be, but to me, what is most bothersome was the pass rush, particularly against Mississippi State and the blitz pressure. I mean, they were able to put some pressure that others were not. So he couldn't sit back and survey the field quite as well as he did in the early stages. So I can't say that it's the knee brace as much as, the issues there. Had an injury, obviously, at guard that affected some leakage against a good front last week. So I think it's more that than the brace, but it could very well have an effect. Nobody really likes that brace. You don't move around in it quite as well. It's not I don't know, how do I describe it? It feels awkward, but it's there to protect something that would be potentially severe. And, if you get it, hit on it, you don't have it. I'd be shocked if he's not wearing it in the game. And again, look, treatment may be going well, and he might feel better today than he has, prior to the injury. It's still an issue of, okay, how do you want to play this in this game? Do you want to use it? I will go another direction. What if Jalen Hurts can't go in the national playoffs? What if he can't? He just can't push off on the ankle. To me, wouldn't you want to get more reps for your new backup quarterback in case he has to come in the game? Because what happens if Tua goes down in the middle of an Auburn game or a Georgia SEC championship? See, I look at it that way. But the game is not here yet. We'll see how they play it. I'm again on record kind of how I would do it. How I do it's not necessarily the right way. It's just what I think. That's how I would do it, and I think it's risky, a little bit too risky for my blood. But guys want him have a dozen national championships. He knows what he's doing.
Chris, let me ask you, when we go back to this offensive line, is this something that Dave Aranda, because, we respect him as a defensive coordinator, is this something he showed the world how to defend Tua, or is this just simply they're putting pressure and maybe this offensive line is missing some assignments? How do you see, why is these teams as of late getting the pressure? Is it quality? Why are they getting pressure?
The quality of the teams. Mississippi State's got one of the best defensive fronts in the country. So, Georgia doesn't even base rush as good as Mississippi State. So this is what you could see potentially Clemson do, Michigan do, to some degree Notre Dame, just potential foes down the road. It's about personnel. LSU's pretty good, probably comparable to Georgia in terms of their front. They blitzed a little more. It's not a formula for everyone knows how you got to try to slow down Tua. You've got to get good pressure in his face, but not everybody can do it. And the reason why people haven't been able to do it is because that offensive line has played great, graded out great most of this year. Again, against a really top defensive front with an injury at guard, it wasn't as easy, so to speak. That's the issue. I don't think it's a formula. I think it's just more of got better talent. And we're now after this week. We're in, Auburn's got a pretty good defensive front. Again, Georgia's a little different, but still very formidable. And playoffs, we'll throw potentially Clemson in there and whoever else that, we're looking at a different level. So don't expect now, for Alabama fans, for this offensive line to perform as well or look as good. They may perform as well, but the result may not be as good as when they played most of the opponents they played this year. That's a result of Alabama being so superior to the teams that they played. They're just playing better people, and they've been able to, because Alabama's so balanced, LSU, Mississippi State, for example, not enough offense to make it work. I thought grading the tape against LSU, for example, and Mississippi State, I thought Mississippi State and LSU did some good things defensively against Alabama, holding them to, like 29, 24 points, but they could do nothing offensively, holding them to that amount. That used to be a really good point total. You're succeeding now when you hold Alabama to 25, 30 points. That's why they're so difficult to beat, and that's why the importance of having a healthy quarterback playing at his best. And, what I say is you're not only going to have to play your best around him, block better than you have all year long, because the result may not be as easy as it has been because the talent you're going to face is better. And then Tua, in my opinion, has to be healthier. He's going to have to slide better, step in better, and he's going to have to be comfortable to be able to take off and run and do certain things that make him effective. If you know that he's not going to run, a little bit of a lame duck, and you can get pressure, it's easier to defend. So my thing is if I'm Alabama, I'm thinking, what can I do to best prepare my team to be the healthiest and the strongest going into the most important games of the year, which is the same thing that Nick Saban's trying to do. And that's why he wants to play them this week. And my feeling is maybe it's a little bit risky to do it. If they get away with it, it's fine. If we don't, and he gets injured, don't call me next week. I don't think I want to discuss it.
I'm with you. We're talking to Chris Landry. You can join all 32 NFL teams, 78 major college football programs, and become members of LandryFootball.com. Get in on all the latest inside information from a guy that the college and the NFL programs turn to as a consultant and coaching and scouting matters. For less than a magazine subscription, you can get the film room breakdowns, recruiting, college football, the NFL draft, the NFL as a season, coaching searches. That's heating up as coaches and the dominoes begin to fall. Check it out, LandryFootball.com today for our best season membership package ever. Membership options include $3, $6, $9 monthly, as well as yearly. Get access to insights of a coach, a veteran coach, a scout administrator. All you have to do is tell them that you heard it right here on the game. Chris, let me look ahead here just for a couple of minutes. Auburn. What do you see in this football team when we talk about looking ahead? Don't tell Nick that we're talking about quarterbacks not playing, and now we're looking ahead to Auburn. I mean, he will explode. We've even talked about Heisman trophies here. Don't tell him. I mean, we're going to get in the doghouse.
Yeah, I got a two-part, Coach. What's your plan? Really, are you going to go forward with playing Tua? And do you think this is going to affect his, if he doesn't play much, it's going to affect his Heisman?
Glory to God, have mercy.
We're just kidding, folks, because we know what that would be.
Trust me, as media guys in that room, we do take bets on what would make him. And sometimes it's the simplest questions.
And it's because he goes, I can tell you that, he goes in with the idea that, I'm going to talk about this. So, hey, Coach, what do you think about the weather today? Well, I'm going to tell you about the weather. And I don't know why you're bringing up the weather, Ryan, because, if you – and he loves it. That's what he goes. But to look ahead to Auburn, I see a defense in front that's pretty good. I see an offense that just is inept. I think you saw what Georgia did to him last week. I think this has the makings of a beatdown potentially, because I don't see Auburn. Again, Auburn's defense is on the field too much. They won't be able to stop in the secondary. Alabama, they'll be able to get some pass rush, but Alabama will be able to balance out their offense, score points. And, where are the points coming out of Auburn? They can't run the football like they like to. And, I don't see them having enough passing game. I thought Georgia took it to them, and I think Alabama's better. I think that could get one-sided pretty quick.
Wow. And we certainly want to move a little bit to Georgia. Good Lord. What do you see in this dog team when you begin to study them on film and in some areas that they're deficient in some strengths of their team?
Well, the first thing is, I've been impressed so much what Kirby's done, because he's doing it, all the analysts, how he's recruiting, who he's recruiting, the style of guys that fit the profile is just so much. It's Alabama all over again. And, seeing it last year manifest itself in the championship game, I'm thinking, this is really good. Then you look at, they lose guys to Roquan Smith and things, then you tend to forget, what, they're going to be playing a lot of young guys, and they're talented. But as I watched them at the beginning of the year and I watched them go, you could see, they're not quite there. And then you had the game against LSU and the turnovers, and then I have noticed a marked improvement. And it's because they've got talented young guys that are now, think about this, how many more practices those guys have by November as opposed to September. You build off of every one of those practices, and you do it over and over and over again, and they're starting to get really good. I don't think they're as good as last year's team. I think next year they're going to be really good. They're playing like Alabama does in a lot of these games. They played a whole bunch of young guys. They played a whole bunch of pups against Auburn, and they played it, and I think that's going to pay dividends for them. They'll be good. They'll play aggressive. No one's going to expect them to win. And it's one of those games where if they pull the upset, assuming, again, they take care of Georgia Tech and, they don't lose, they can play their way into the national playoffs. And I don't think – people talk about it as a scenario, but nobody's really taking it seriously. So I think they're going to take that as a challenge. Nobody's giving you a chance and yada, yada, yada. And I think it's a good situation for them. and they're a pretty good team. I don't like their pass rush. I don't think they're defending the run as well as they need to, and I don't like their red zone offense. They're just not effective enough in those areas, in my opinion, to beat Alabama, unless Alabama plays poorly or has one of those quarterback issues we've talked about. I don't see them. I don't think they're as good as Clemson. So they're good. I just don't think they're good enough. But in a one-game scenario, we all know anything can happen.
Chris, we love the way that you take a look at it through your lenses, the way that you understand football. If I was asking you, regardless of where they're ranked on this college football playoff committee, how would you say, or who are the best 4 teams in college football?
Well, it's pretty simple. It's Alabama, and you draw a line after them. Then it's Clemson, which is getting better and better and creeping closer to Alabama. Then I'd draw a line behind them. I think those are the 2 best teams, and I think we're going to see barring again, unforeseen circumstances that I could see that I can't see right now. That's the 2 best teams. Then on film, I think it's pretty close between Michigan and Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is a little bit more complete, more balanced. When they've got Ian Book, they run the football well. Offensive line's playing well. Clark Lee's done a good job with that defense. They're better, for example, than the year they played Alabama in the BCS championship game. That year they won games and they just really struggled, but they barely beat Pitt. And they're taking teams apart. And I'm very curious to see. They've got a pretty good Syracuse team they've got to play in Yankee Stadium this Saturday, and we'll see if they can continue it. But both those, Michigan's really good defensively. Overall, a little better than Notre Dame defensively. Not as good running the football, and it really comes down to beat Alabama, you have to have a great game from your quarterback. Either you have to have a great quarterback or a quarterback that plays great. And so, for any of those to have a chance, they would need Ian Book or Shea Patterson to play great. Those are the 4 best teams. Then, to me, there's another drop-off, and that's where I would put Georgia. That's where I would put a one-sided Oklahoma team that's probably does as much offensively as good as anybody that would rival Alabama offensively but has no defense. West Virginia, that's good. Washington State, that's a good team. Ohio State, that's talented but hasn't put it together. To me, you can take 6, 7, and go all the way down to 17, and you throw them in a hat, Ryan, and on a given day, there's not a whole lot that separates them. I mean, really, there's just not. I think there's a definite gap between the elite teams, and I don't know. I'm very curious next week. I think Michigan is clearly better than Ohio State right now, but I'm going to tell you, that game might be a lot better next week than people might think. It would be just like Ohio State at home in that game, backs against the wall type. That might be a better game than we think. I just don't really trust what I've seen of Ohio State on tape. But Alabama, Clemson, Michigan, Notre Dame are the 4 best teams that I have seen on film all year long as I chart them.
What a tease on the front of the website, LandryFootball.com. Rush on over to the website there and listen to Rush the Field, which is their Wednesday college football podcast. What's the nightmare scenario for the college football playoffs? I mean, there's a lot of those. You can go and listen to LandryFootball.com each Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday and Thursday, they publish the Landry Football Podcast, Rush the Field, which is the college football podcast. All those are free listens on the front of the website, LandryFootball.com. Chris, invite us to check out the website and connect with you.
Oh, we appreciate it. Obviously, we'd love to have everybody check us out. We're really proud of it, and it's like having access to your own coaching and scouting department. It's very, very affordable. For the premium part of it, as Ryan said, we've got some podcasts that are up for free. You can get some of that information. But our film room breakdowns, we've got a lot of specials coming up, working right now on roster analysis on a lot of programs around the country, and even working on the Alabama one right now, and working on recruiting. Recruiting is such a big part of everything, and breaking down every prospect that Alabama is committed and will sign in December, and we'll do that for everybody. So it's It's a great resource if you like football. We think you can learn more about the coaching and scouting angle and perspective of the game. So, listen, we think you'll love it. It's the pro game as well. We cover the NFL game. So it's nonstop football, 24/7 and 365. So check us out at LandryFootball.com. Follow us on Twitter at LandryFootball. We're doing some different things, some more audio posts, some things that we try to take advice from our followers, our members that say, hey, we'd like to see more of this and less of that. And so we're here to serve you. So check us out at LandryFootball.com. We think you'll love it.
Football views from a coach, a scout, and administrator, Chris Landry, LandryFootball.com. Chris, as always, thank you again for your time. Have a great week.
Hey, thank you so much. Take care.